What's up, everybody? Wall Street Jesus, Tuesday post-market wrap-up. What are you guys thinking? Big mess. But let's go over a couple of the. There's not too many of them, but we'll go over a couple of the good things just to get to the point here. Okay. If you guys, well, a lot of you guys remember whether you're a member or not. The last point I think that we discussed on the Tuesday webinar, we were coming off, or it might have been right around there, right where you see this red niner. All right. And we went from extreme bearish sentiment into the lows, big, huge squeeze. And, you didn't really need sentiment indicators to pick up on the bullishness out there. A lot of people calling for the end of the correction, Santa Claus rally, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And, like clockwork, boop, market rolls over, and we're kind of seeing the worst of the selling, only because it's been in a lot of the names that retail money likes to trade. Remember, we were giggling about that Robinhood article I posted in the room and on my personal Twitter that said retail traders on Robinhood remain stubborn. They will keep buying the dip in Facebook, Netflix, blah, all the popular names they've been buying for years. And, that stuff needs to get washed out eventually. A lot of people who have been in this game a while, like myself, can't believe it took this long for that to happen. But they're getting it good now. They're getting it good now. A lot of the tech names, a lot of the software names, again, those crowded trades, okay? And this has been going on for a lot longer than this intermediate top here. We were talking, a lot of us, on these webinars through the latter part of the summer, we're talking about, again, just my slang on it, that bear market tornado that kept going from sector to sector to sector while the S&P 500 was breaking new highs. You had stuff like the casinos, the home builders, commodity names, the banks, they were in shambles. And a lot of the retail money didn't pick up on it because why? Because they're in FANG and they're in some software names that Kramer's pumping, and that's all they care about. All right. So now they're going to feel it the worst here. Okay. And the good thing about that is when they feel it the worst, a lot of times it's going to line up with extreme bearish sentiment. Okay. What we want to see. And that's what we're seeing now. All right. As I like to call it today, was day one of weakness into confirmed bearish sentiment. All right. There are a couple things that I look at that I would like to get there that are the only two things missing. Again, we're not seeing that panic on the put the calls yet. All right. We don't necessarily need to see that. I'll give you an example. This squeeze we didn't get any panic on the put the calls, but they were elevated. Okay. But no panic. And what I mean by panic, very simple example, on an equity put the call, you see a 1 printed. Okay. I think the highest we got up to throughout this correction here is in the 8.8. Okay. So this low here, we didn't have that panic on the put the calls. There was a squeeze regardless. And this low here, where a lot of the intermediate sentiment readings, the positions that measure the positions, not just traders, a lot of it lined up here with bearish extreme sentiment. And again, the put the call, we weren't seeing that panic, but a powerful squeeze. Okay. So I try not to get too hung up on waiting for that panic to register in some of these readings, because we don't need the bottom in order to profit off a nice squeeze. Okay. Again, this squeeze was powerful, and a lot of you guys made a decent amount of money in this squeeze without that panic or without even, necessarily a bottom put in place. All right. Maybe we get it. We could walk in tomorrow and the futures are gapping down, and you see these absurd numbers pre-market on a lot of these retail names, and right off the open, we finally get there. We finally get that wash. It's certainly possible. Okay. But the way I like to play it, and everybody's different. And I could give you some other examples of how other players that other traders I've been around play it. If you're looking to catch the squeeze as far as a swing position, okay, if you want to be aggressive, today is where you have to at least start looking to nibble. Okay. And for a lot of us, in the steam room and all, we want to see the flow at least confirm that. Okay. So what we want to see is we want to see some real buying, okay, come in. It doesn't have to be Bazooka Joe. All right. But we want to see some legit buying come in, because it just makes us feel better that professional money is starting to piece in as well. All right. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be early. All right. If I thought if I thought for sure we wouldn't be early, then you wouldn't piece in. You would go all in. Okay. But the reason why you want to piece in as a swing trader is because, take this for example. All right. We had bearish sentiment at an extreme, and then some signs of flow, if you guys can make it out on a 5. Again, it doesn't always work out like this, but I'm just giving you an example on day 5 here. Okay. And I remember the market rallied and then gave it all back. And you could see it closed at the lower end of the bar. And then the next morning, we had another flush to lows right out of the gate. All right. And that was met with additional flow. We squeezed off the lows there. And then from that point here, so here's the example I'm giving you. If you didn't at least start to prepare and start looking and have an idea of a plan of what you want to do to catch that squeeze for a swing, you had literally this day, and I don't know if you guys remember this day, but that was the day the flow exploded and the market was really strong. You pretty much had to chase outside of the morning. This was the only day that you could have positioned at that sweet spot of an entry, right? Because you get the gap up and now you're chasing this. All right. And you're always left with that uncertainty of whether, we're just in a rally of this sort. Okay. Or it's something bigger than that, larger than that. Now, the more sentiment you have wrapped up, the more shorts that are involved. A lot of times the rally will be bigger in size, more powerful. But, you just never feel comfortable with a market coming off lows buying up here. So at the least, you're already starting to put on some exposure, or at least preparing to put on some exposure, while understanding you're going to be early. And at the same time, here's the biggest issue I see with a lot of traders, okay? If you're looking to catch the squeeze for a swing trade, all right, that's because you're looking for a bigger reward and you're willing to take a bigger risk on. It's that simple, okay? You could very easily say, you know what, Jesus, I'm just going to trade intraday. I'm going to look for action into fades and weakness, and I know sentiment's on my side, and I'm just going to look to be more aggressive on an intraday basis because I don't want that overnight risk. I don't want that risk of being early. That's fine, okay, if you come to that conclusion. But if you decided you want to take on more risk for that bigger reward as a swing trader, you got to understand that as a swing trader, if you start nibbling in a position, you start putting on a position in, let's say, Google calls, which they bought today, and Google rallies that day off the action, but then fades, that can't throw you off your plan because nothing's really changed. Okay. And I see so many traders that are getting wrapped up in the tick for tick and the rip and fades throughout the day with an elevated VIX when their plan is to, position for a squeeze over a swing time frame. So you just got to understand that. And I'm not saying it's easy to do, by no means, because no matter what, I can promise you one thing. All right. If you're looking to play squeezes like this or sentiment, okay, we're buying into bearish extreme sentiment. It's never going to be rosy when you're throwing buy tickets in there. You're never going to feel good about it. And the likelihood is if you do feel a little good about it, you're probably early. Okay? So it's difficult. It's difficult. And if your intention is to catch that trade and to position for that trade, you have to acknowledge that, and you have to try to not get wrapped up in, again, if you're day trading, you're wrapped up into each and every fade and rip throughout the day. But if you're swing trading, you should be looking to find entries off fades and not chase rips, and be patient and not let the fades bother you and not let them neg you out, and understand that that's the playbook in this environment for this type of trade. All right. So again, for me, I put on it some exposure. I bought some Google calls. I bought a little Apple. And tomorrow, again, we'll see. We got the holiday week too today. A lot of times today, the flow we saw early morning, a lot of times that flow ends up just exploding throughout the afternoon. And, you'll get a fade. But, a lot of times there's a strength there and visible with the type of action we had into the morning weakness. Today, what happened was we got UVXY put sweeper, which pretty much confirmed the squeeze is on, okay? And then we got some size coming into Google, Apple, some Facebook, some tech, some software names, and you could almost feel like the flow was ready to explode. And then we went into the lunchtime hour, and things just dropped dead. Okay, the flow didn't flip. It wasn't like all of a sudden put sweepers grabbed the ball and the flow flipped. It just went dead. And there really wasn't an uptick in the activity all the way into the bell. A small uptick in the last 10 minutes. Tiny. All right, so that could have a lot to do with the holiday week. All right, so it may not go exactly as we see it according to plan because of the holiday week, right? Tomorrow is likely going to be a quiet day. So you can very easily see that drip, and they'll test buyers, and who knows, maybe they don't find them on a day like tomorrow, and we have some weakness. And then Thursday, the markets close, and then Friday, we got a half a day. All right, but the bottom line is if you are trying to utilize the tools we utilize, which is sentiment and then confirmed by sweeper activity, here's where you have to start looking for sweeper activity you like, especially more so into weakness than anything else. More so into weakness than anything else. All right. And again, it depends on what type of trader you are, that's why there's no blanket answer to any of these questions. I know I got traders, players that I've worked around my whole career. Well, the way they would approach it is they would start piecing in to a SPY call position, something like that. That would be their first thing they do. And then as the flow starts to confirm everything, then they'll tack on the names. So at least they have market exposure, just in case a rally runs away from them, and they have to chase, and they're not comfortable putting on sides from that point. But at least they got that SPY position. So everybody's different. Everybody's different. So that's why I don't like to push my way. And I get aggravated with any trader out there or player out there tries to push their way on anybody else. All right, it all comes down to how much you're willing to risk, how you want to risk it, what you want to play. I will say this though. The flow is not as important. And what I mean by that, I try to make this as clear as possible, because when I write those like post-market reports, I'm jotting things down, and sometimes they don't come across the way I want them to. But what I mean by that is, if you see sweepers in Apple, Google, Facebook, and Netflix, and Amazon's left out, but Amazon is a name, you have high confidence that if the market squeezes and the rest of FANG is going to squeeze, you have high confidence that Amazon's going to squeeze, and you think you could get a bigger buck for your bet there. There's no reason to shy away from Amazon just because it's not seeing flow. What we want to learn from the flow is that buyers are putting money to work and stuff that matters. Okay, that's all we're looking for. We're looking for the professional money to confirm to us that, all right, sentiment reached an extreme. There's a higher probability that a squeeze may be around the corner. All right. Anybody have any questions regarding that? Okay. And again, I get the question, have you seen it go lower from there? Every market's different. I was telling the guys in the room today a quick story. 2011, which is not really known as one of the notorious corrections out there, but it was pretty vicious. You know what I mean? There was acceleration there. And I remember 2011, from what I remember, it felt like I was a good week early. But then, the squeeze was ridiculous. And you know what happened after 2011. All right, so there's no exact answer. How big of a squeeze, where does it end? It all depends. Does it turn into a whole new bullish trend? I wish I had those answers ahead of time. This is all stuff you need to reevaluate as we move forward. All right. And what I mean by that is, let's say tomorrow we get that flush, reversal, and we start to squeeze. The only way we're going to really know if it's anything more than a squeeze is if the flow erupts, explodes. And it will. With prices where they're at on a lot of these big names, okay, if we're going to enter a whole new bullish trend, trust me, flow will effing explode. And what we didn't see, we definitely saw some flow, but we weren't impressed by the flow in this squeeze. It was straight up squeeze flow. We were calling it squeeze flow as soon as it happened, all the way to the tail end. The best part of the action came early on. If you guys remember, there was a good-looking Amazon sweep. There was a good-looking Netflix sweep. There was a good-looking Salesforce sweep. Square caught a good-looking sweep. So there were several important names that caught action early on. But then as the rally stretched, it was all smaller momentum squeeze sweepers. No sharp activity. Hence why, if you guys remember, I took off I made it my business to take off a lot of long exposure into these highs here, because I just didn't feel good about the flow. And I thought at the least I'd get a better entry to reposition. On top of bullish extreme sentiment and the whole 9 yards. So, but again, that's stuff we learn along the way. And it's totally fine that way. Okay, we just you keep your eyes open, you keep an open mind, you try not to get too wrapped up in the noise and a bias, and you'll be able to see these things. Hold on. I saw a question. Do you use stops to try to accumulate slippage? You know, Chris, it's funny you mentioned that because when I was a stock guy, okay, because for my whole career, for the most part, I traded equity. And now for swing trading, I've been utilizing calls. All right. So the answer to your question is on the equity side, I always use the stop. Okay. If I had to size down because I knew I had to stay loose because of the volatility, I was fine with that. You know, I was totally fine with that. And, you know, you don't want to be too tight when you're buying into a setup like this. Okay. But you got to admit when you're wrong on the equity side because, you know, there's a black hole underneath. But when you're like the beauty of options for me, okay, is that you can risk what you put into those calls. That could be very easy. That's the easiest stop loss to implement, in my opinion. Put in what you're willing to lose. Okay, and what happens? A lot of greedy traders, a lot of greedy players, they don't like to do that. Why? Because they're not going to make that score, right? They have that score on their mind. But I can promise you, if you're positioned even in a small way at the start of the rally, and you start to see more bullish signs as it develops, okay, you're going to make a damn good piece of money off that rally. You know, not every setup has to be a freaking score. And when you start worrying about the score in this game, you're not going to last too long. You know, listen, I'm not trying to, there's no arrogance behind, you know, scores, they're not that hard. Okay. It's very easy. You want to make a score? You just got to take more risk. That's all. Right? You want to make a score? Come up with a decent number that you're willing to risk and start piecing in right now. All right. If you happen to catch this squeeze, you're going to score. If not, you're going to get a lump. But that doesn't change for anybody. You know what I mean? There's no magic behind making a score in this game. You know, and listen, when you manage money, you know, guys like Tepper and guys like Tepper made a score by buying off the 2008 blood, right? Armageddon. He bought when even myself, I'm not afraid to admit it, I was shitting my pants, thinking the whole economy as I know it's coming to an end, pulling money out of bank accounts, and Tepper was buying blue chip stocks at $1.50. All right, but he, you know, now that I look back at it, what was I worried about, you know, losing the money if the whole world was coming to an end anyway? But that's all it is. You know, that's all it is. But if you want to hang around this game, okay, if this is the first correction you're a part of, and what I mean by that, if you're a 2009 on type trader, I suggest you take it nice and easy. Okay, you haven't seen corrections. This is totally normal shit. Okay, this is stuff that is supposed to happen. It usually happens once every 3 to 6 months. It just disappeared, maybe because of QE or whatever excuse there is out there, but it just disappeared. This is totally normal. Okay, if you scroll back, I was doing this last night. It just blew my mind, you know, of where we're at. Let me do candles so you can see it better. Like if you go back and scroll back and look at, you know what I mean? Look at this market and what it's done. This is totally normal. You look at names like, you know, NVIDIA and all these hot tech names and the run that they went on from 2000 to 2016 lows at 25 bucks to 300. This is normal. This is normal. The stock just don't continue higher and go to 1,000 in a straight line. You know, these corrections are normal. All right. But again, I can tell you from my experience, I know a lot of people, a lot of players in the game, the majority of them, who have survived these corrections and got made coming out of them. And not off one stock that they traded off a bearish extreme low, from just being around and having ammo and the gunpowder to take advantage of when the market turned. And we don't know when that is. But the only way we're going to know is if we have our eyes open and hang around and look for entries to get us involved at decent risk reward spots. All right. So, like, for example, let's say you're bearish right now. And this is the difficulty with shorting over the course of your career. Okay. If you're bearish, all right, you cannot start shorting in the hole here. You may get away with it this time, but over the course of the career, you're gonna go broke. Okay, you're gonna go broke. And anybody who's short will tell you that. So what you're looking for on the short side, you're looking for these bear market rallies, right? Because you feel we're in a bear market or correction that's going to be a lot worse than this. So you're looking for this rip, and that's where you're looking for short entries. And just like now, right, where we're looking to buy, you're likely going to be early. It's going to be painful. All right, but when it turns, you start to add and you take advantage of the leg lower and make some money. All right, you're shorting at the top of the range. You're not looking to short at the bottom of the range, as bearish things are. And you're looking to short when a lot of that that bearish sentiment is out and bulls got reeled in. All right, so that's all this is, no matter what your interpretation of the market is. My interpretation, I have no idea. Or I have no idea. I don't think from my experience, nobody has an idea of what this market holds. You know, but again, all I can share with you guys is from my experience, when I see sentiment crowded like it is now on a risk reward basis, right? Downside compared to upside potential. These are the entries you want to start looking. All right. So, and listen, you want to take a more conservative approach. You want to see maybe some better signs out there out of flow, right? Or, maybe a little better price action. A lot of times that's too late. But just like I said on the short side, if you're looking to be involved in this type of market, you can't buy up here off the rally playing breakout. You're going to get annihilated, right? What happens? This turns into like what a lot of the bears are talking about, a prolonged, bear market downtrend type thingy. Lower highs, lower lows, blah, blah, blah. You buy here, you got no shot. You got no shot. So no matter what you're doing, that's how you want to look at these things for entries. And like I said, the beauty of sentiment with sweeper activity just increases the probability a little more in your favor. Yeah, and who knows, we don't even know if this ends up turning into a recession. I remember, not to sound like an old man, 1998 was one of the more vicious corrections I've been a part of. Everybody was talking recession. I was just getting wet behind the ears in the business, and I felt like I just got there and brokers were walking out of the office, smoking cigarettes, packing their stuff. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like the end of the world. Recession, game over, blah, blah, blah. And then the market bottomed just when everybody was suicidal and went on to 1999 into 2000. And you know what happened then. Nobody saw that coming. Not one person saw that coming. Okay, so again, the noise, nobody knows what's going on. But again, I'm sharing from my experience how through the course of my career, even in these times, I found a way to hang around and try to make some money, but more importantly, keep myself involved and keep my eyes open. Because just when you get frustrated, just when you're really ready to throw in the towel, that's when you're probably going to miss the best opportunity you had out of this market. I mean, make sense? Yeah, and Vince is saying algo trading is compressing time and shit happens faster. Without a doubt. But Vince, nobody was complaining when the market was going up. You know what I mean? Nobody was complaining when FANG was going up every freaking day. You know, I'll be honest with you. I don't like to see anybody lose money. I'm being dead straight with you guys, okay? I don't like rooting against people, but I thought I'd be a lot happier the day I saw these FANG and high-tech names get destroyed. Because you had riffraff out there thinking they're gurus, right? Oh, yeah, I got 2 straight years of profitability. Oh, yeah, what do you do? Oh, I just trade FANG. That's all. I don't trade anything else. I'm just trading FANG. Yeah, FANG has been going up in a straight line for 2 years. And on that point, I'll share that with a lot of you people, and you guys already heard this out of my mouth, but I'll repeat it. If you're fairly new in the game, only a couple years, okay, whether you've been making money, whether you've been spinning your wheels, these times are what make you as a player in this game. Not the bull markets, not 2017. You can be an orangutan and make money. Okay, it's these times finding a way to survive and trying to grind it out and make a little money in these times without getting run over. You know, and I got again, Twitter is fabulous for this. You know, I got tweets on Twitter trolling me. Well, I'm shorting the shit out of everything, so I'm making a ton of money in these times. Yeah, and then when you get run over, you're gone. I've seen a million of you over my 20-year career, a million of you guys. You get run over and you're on the street corner with a cup because you're shorting everything. You know, so, but again, as a trader, this is where you will learn the most about yourself and what you need to do to find success for your career as a player in this game. And that could be, you know, something different that dawns on you. Each and every person's different. You know, could be just trading these sentiment setups and you got some decent risk management behind it. And that's the way you find a way to make some money and catch a whole new bull trend when it shows up. It could be that basically you have to sit in cash. You have to sit in cash and find a way to entertain yourself until things clear up. But a lot of traders can't do that. Ani, I trade. So here's again, this is for me. Okay. This is what I like to do in these times. Okay. I'll give you an example, Ani, and you know because we've been together a while, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Today I come in, Ani, and we know everything, almost everything we were looking for on the sentiment side was there officially, right? Coming into today. So what that tells me now is any weakness Whether it's a lot, a little is irrelevant. Any weakness, if there's a band of sweeper activity coming in, and what I mean by that, you guys know these sweepers, they come in bands, right? When they're buying shit, they come in, they go boom, 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 boom. All right, and then sometimes the market's chopping around, or the market will drip like it did yesterday, and you see a sweeper every half hour, every 45 minutes. All right, but when they're getting aggressive, when shorts are getting squeezed, when market makers need to hedge, the sweeper activity looks like that. Boom, 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 boom. I want to get, as a day trader, when I got sentiment on my side in this climate, I want to get in the middle of that. Whatever vehicle it may be. If I think the name can squeeze, names have been easier to trade, I'll look for names. If it's SPY, I'll look to trade SPY. If you trade ES, maybe you want to trade ES. If you trade SPY calls, maybe you want to trade SPY calls, right? You like Google, you think was worth it off the action for a squeeze with the market, you played Google. Whatever it may be. Again, it's a preference thing. But on an intraday basis, when I got sentiment on my side like I do now, and that's signaling to me a high probability of a squeeze, when the sweepers are getting aggressive, and I know that can create some momentum in itself, I want to get in the middle of that. Okay? And why? Because a lot of times it can get exaggerated because of sentiment being so bearish. Shorts are getting squeezed. So in other words, in a neutral sentiment environment, right? Maybe the squeeze is not as big off that type of sweeper activity. But in this type of environment where you have shorts all in and they're leaning, you get some big time squeezes. All right. So, and for example, the afternoon as opposed to the morning, we didn't get a band of sweeper activity the whole freaking afternoon into the ding dong. So I didn't day trade a thing. All right, I didn't day trade a thing. Like right here, for example, this niner right here, I was hoping sweepers would come in there. I was hoping there'd be a nice little uptick in sweeper activity. I'd have a nice entry there. I can put a stop somewhere underneath it, and maybe I'd get a move back to new highs where I can raise a stop. But there was no sweeper activity. The bounce was futile anyway. All right. But also, you're asking me what I did today. I traded the morning, which a lot of us did for the most part, and I put on some exposure on the swing end this morning. That's what I did today. All right. And again, I probably am early, and I'm not. I can promise you that. I had that expectation. Otherwise, I'd go all in on the swing, like I said, if I didn't think I was going to be early. All right, so now tomorrow, again, we got the holiday, so it may not line up this way. But let's say tomorrow we got some weakness, and all of a sudden we see the same type of sweeper activity that came in this morning. I'm going to look to day trade it and hopefully find something else I can add to swing. Tomorrow we might, who knows? I don't know how dead it's going to be. I have no idea. Yeah, and listen, so far it's going according to plan. I mentioned on Twitter yesterday, it just, not the economy, not where the markets come from. There's no way this compares to 2016. It's apples and oranges. I'm talking about the price action and the bottom forming here. All right, if you go back and look at that little chart I showed you in 2016, there was something similar to this. Had a squeeze, Okay, totally rolled over. And I remember the lows like it was yesterday. Those lows are so vivid in my memory, the way they played out 2016. You had another down day here, whoop, everybody bearish as all hell, and Bazooka Joe. Which I thought, honestly, I thought Bazooka Joe was firing this morning. I'm being honest with you. I thought that flow was going to explode into the afternoon. In a way, I didn't want it to happen that way because, I would like to have a bigger swing position. But like when I saw that Goog bet, that name doesn't catch action regularly. When you see $1 million sweep in Goog, you're like, oh boy. So maybe that's the early sign, okay? Because what the market does, at least my interpretation of it, sellers are going to test and they're going to push lower and lower until they find buyers. If they don't find buyers here, they're going to keep pushing. They don't find real buyers here, they'll keep pushing. They'll keep pushing until someone stops them, whether they're machines or not, until somebody steps in. Until someone steps in. And then, like for example, today, right? They pushed it, boom, some buyers stepped in. So now what happens is the buyers all of a sudden stop buying, right? Things calm down. Sellers sniff that out. What do? They're going to test them again. So they keep dripping and dripping and dripping all afternoon, and they never showed up again. So maybe there's a little more weakness until they do. If you look 2016, I can show you on here and you'll see what I mean. And like I said, I want to repeat because I got 86 responses on Twitter. I'm not saying we're in 2016, even though, you had oil spilling and you had a lot of things that resemble it. I'm just giving you the way we bottomed there. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Right, the rally, I don't know, the rally we probably just had was sharper, bigger, but that's irrelevant. So you had this rally roll over, right? Look, actually, we would be right here according to that chart. But it was this day right here, this day, where they gapped it down, they tested them, and they ran into a wall of buyers. But here was the difference between here and all these other low points. From this point on, the flow exploded. The flow just exploded. Exploded. Again, the squeeze we just had, there wasn't an explosion in flow. You guys know, you guys in the room. We were calling it squeeze sweepers the whole trip. You see, like that Goog bet, Tim? You get 7 of those. You get 7 of those in a 2-3 day radius. And you see the price action just looks healthier. It just looks better. And then, we got to worry about, intraday pullbacks. That's where we're looking for entries. But the flow is just, we're going to come on webinars and we're going to have a gazillion names to talk about. Catch and flow. Right now, what names we haven't had, if you think about it, like we haven't had any names to talk about. We've been complaining about that Saturday webinar. We just, since the summer, there's just not a lot of names that have been set up well off flow. I was talking about 2015. There was a pullback right before that into the Feb here. You're talking about, this, right? So look, similar again, right? Similar. Actually, you got this. This This might be what I was referring to, but this was a little higher. This was over the course of a couple of months, though. Yeah, limit down. That's right, Abby. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, this was, I'm telling you, and flow was even worse back then. I remember there wasn't a call buyer to be found. There was, this stretch here was a disaster. You had oil, shit in the bed, excuse my French. You had a lot of pain over here. A lot of pain. So, we'll see. Again, you don't want to look too far ahead. You never know what the market has in store. Of course, right now, it looks as bearish as you're going to feel. Okay. It felt less bearish after the big squeeze we had here. That's totally normal, right? People call it for Santa Claus. Now Santa Claus dropped dead. That's all. That's why sentiment works. You're supposed to feel like that. You're supposed to give up down here, and you're supposed to be reeled in up here on the long side. That's the way it's supposed to work in this environment. All right. But I will say this, and you guys know, we haven't spoken about this for you guys who aren't members. You got some key sentiment indicators that are lining up into these lows. This is not just short-term trader sentiment and stuff like that. You got some key sentiment indicators that are flashing extreme bearish signals here. And that's not, people don't look at that for a squeeze over the course of a couple of days. That's something where you go, 3 months out, you got a 90% win rate and a great risk reward type thing when you backtest. A lot of them. AIM, Sentiment Trader Smart Money, the DSI, Daily Sentiment Index, I think closed at 10 today, something like that, 10% bulls. You got a lot of stuff that's lining up. But I repeat, that doesn't mean we can't be down today, tomorrow. Okay, that just means that this spot here on a risk reward basis is a solid entry, as good as an entry as you're going to find in this type of climate. Oh yeah, Chris. Chris is asking if the lack of sweeper activity has happened. Yeah, that's the problem. That's what becomes the problem. See, when you have a rally that gets long in the tooth, all right, what happens is all the names that were catching that solid activity, now they're stretched. So now you got players rolling existing positions. The smart money is not buying, Nvidia off this low and at this high. You know what I mean? They're rolling their positions. So, that's why I looked like a fool. Like a lot of you guys kept asking me about these names on the webinar. And, I was being honest with you guys. I don't have an opinion. I mean, these things are cooked. Can they continue to go higher? Of course. But there's going to be a time that this happens. They can't go up forever. So what happens is the call sweeper activity in any new, fresh names, initial activity, dries up. It just dries up. What's another example, Chris? Before the Trump election, flow went totally sour. And then literally a couple days prior to the election, flow started to turn. Yeah, for months. For months. For months. And then you got worse situations out there, if you go back through time, and sometimes it lasts longer. 2011, like I said, a lot of you guys might have traded through that. That was the government shutdown, if you guys remember. That was pretty vicious. I tell you, out of all the corrections, out of all the pullbacks of recent 2009 forward, okay, 2011 was the worst one as far as running through extreme sentiment readings. In other words, 2016 pretty much nailed the lows. 2011, I'm telling you, I remember like being, I gotta say, at least a week early, definitely around a week early. So in other words, let's say where we are now, you got another week of selling, which can add up, can add up. But again, look at what followed, look at what followed. So we'll see what happens. All right. And that's the key thing too. Like if for those of you who follow flow, you want flow sweeper activity primarily. Forget the blocks. The blocks are useless right now. Don't even look at them. Forget it. Useless. You know my feelings on blocks, period. Now more than ever, flush the blocks down the toilet bowl. Useless on both sides. Okay. But sweeper activity, at least for me, is going to guide me of how aggressive I want to be. Okay. Because just in case I am wrong, right? Just in case this does turn into something systemic and there's a lot more downside before a squeeze. So it's possible, right? So for me, from my experience, if that's the case, okay, you're going to have tomorrow, let's say, again, with the holiday, who knows? I'm just giving the example. Tomorrow, we have some more selling, right? Buyers never show up. The following day, market opens up green a little, rolls over. Sweepers never show up. You understand? That's where it becomes an issue where I'm not going to just create stuff out of thin air and say, oh, I'm just going to add this or I'm going to add that. That caught sweeper activity 3 weeks ago. Oh, yeah, why not buy that? So sweepers are going to be my guide. All right? So let's say weakness tomorrow, no sweeper activity, right? We don't see a goog sweep like that. I'm not going to buy anything. Next week, Monday, there's a little more weakness. 3 missiles come in. I'll look to play one of them. You understand what I'm saying? So as long as the professional money is getting aggressive into the dip, the more I'll look to be aggressive. But if they're not being aggressive, I'm not going to look to outshine them by no means. So that's where flow becomes, is such a huge help for me in this climate. It's not about the stock picking, the names. I use it more as a read on smart money sentiment. All right. And for those of you who aren't members, the best way to play it, if you're not looking at sweeper activity, would be, let's say, again, from this point here, pick a spot, okay, where you're going to make a play on the sentiment squeeze. You put up what you're willing to risk. I mean, stop losses are dangerous now. You could open up, limit down. I'm not saying we will, but you could. All right, so the best way to do it is put in what you're willing to risk and stop worrying about breaking the bank on the upside. And if you're wrong, what happens? It's a freaking loser. That's all. It's a loser, right? Is it the end of the world? It's a loser. And then if the market bleeds to death without a squeeze, continues to bleed, and you think it's another level where you can pull the trigger or whatever, you can put on another play. There's nothing wrong with a loser. People are so scared of losing, having a loser in this climate, but when the market's bleeding new highs, they're not scared of losers. And that's where you're more likely to get a pullback when sentiment's at extreme bullish territory. Martin saying, please look at the put to call. It seems relatively high. Bearish sentiment is supporting upcoming short squeeze. Martin, what do you think I'm babbling about here? I've been babbling about that for an hour and a half on here. You have me on mute? What the hell are you talking about here? Chris is saying if market hits the skids at some point in the future, what does that looking sweeper land tons of put sweepers or nothing? Yeah. Listen, put sweepers. Here's the problem with put sweepers for me. Just like call sweepers in an uptrend. Okay, it's the same thing. Put sweepers are telling me that the momentum is to the downside, Chris. Okay, but I already know the momentum is to the downside. The edge out of sweeper activity to determine market trends is the divergence. Okay, so what I mean by that is momentum down, call sweepers. That's the edge out of sweeper activity. So yeah, if the market continues lower, okay, and there's no call sweeper activity, we're likely going to see a lot of those smaller momentum put sweepers that we've been seeing. Think about up until today, where we saw some decent bets this morning. What did the flow look like? It's been a menagerie. It's been awful. I mean, you see some of the names I've been playing? Awful. Absolutely awful. No, and in bullish trends, Chris, it's the same thing. Because, again, here's an example, okay? When the market's going up like this, you see a lot of call sweeper activity, and you see select put buying. And the likelihood is they're putting on protection. That's what they're doing, okay? When you get into sell mode, what you see is a lack of call sweeper activity and put buying. And the likelihood is that select call buying is protecting some short bets. It's the same stuff, just in reverse. Just in reverse. But the call buying for me tells me all I need to know. The call buying tells me as much as I need to know. Okay? If I'm not seeing call sweeper activity, I don't want to be in the middle of that. It's that simple. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's that simple. All right? If there's no call sweeper activity, I'm not day trading. I'm sure as hell not swing trading my own stock picks. They tell me everything. If the professional money's not getting aggressive, then why do I want to? And that's what happened at the tail end of this move here. And it's easy to say now. Obviously, you never know if it's just a little pullback or something bigger. But, the call buying was just dreadful. The call buying up there was hideous. Yeah, exactly. In this type of climate, when you're in a bull market, it's different, obviously. You're looking for decent call sweeper activity in names that are set up. You're looking for call sweeper activity in certain sectors you're looking at, but you're talking about an uptrend. This is a different playbook now. This is a total different environment right now. All right, but what would be extremely bullish is, like I said, when they try to sell this market, call sweepers are there to buy it. That would be the telltale sign for me. And it usually doesn't, unless it's big enough, it doesn't happen once. A lot of times it'll happen over the course of days. Like I said, 2016, it was one guy, we called him Bazooka Joe because it was that big. All right. Pre-election, it was over the course of a couple days before the election. we started to see signs. Bazooka Joe orders look like the Goog sweep, but bigger and more of them. If I could probably dig them up on Twitter when I posted them. So, this is, again, the reason why this is significant. This is a rare name. This doesn't catch sweeper activity all day long, right? Like Apple, Facebook, they catch call sweepers, put sweepers out to wazoo. Goog, Amazon, they're once in a blue moon. So, this is a missile for Goog. It's not a block. This is a sweep. That's a missile. So Bazooka Joe, again, off the top of my head, I remember he hit, I think it was IWM initially, and it was an ETF. So we were all like, but it was like, it had to be $15 million in IWM calls. Boom, 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 boom. We were like, holy shit. Okay. Again, it was an ETF. So we were like, all right, ETF, whatever. We'll keep our eye on it. And then Apple caught a $2 million sweep. We're like, okay. Facebook, $1.4 million sweep. Then he comes back, Apple again, $700,000. And then at that point, it just ended up another name. And I remember it well. I'm telling you guys, the market, this is how bad it was. The market didn't budge. Okay? Market didn't budge. There was no momentum generated off the action like there usually is. Nothing. The market just continued to drip, sell, right? It was chopping around. And then when that action stopped, it started to roll over the market again a little bit. And then he came back with more. And then when he came back with more as the market was dripping, that's when a good group of us started to get excited. But I told you guys, there were a lot of guys in the room at the time that were totally ignoring it. Didn't want to believe it. It's crazy. I remember, Stephen, there was an OPEC tweet. Somebody from Bloomberg or something tweeted something about OPEC cutting, and it was fake news, everybody was saying. Okay, so the market had a little pop and then started to roll over, and everyone was like, you got to short this. That's fake news. They're not cutting. It was a fake news. It was on that day, on this day right here. They don't always happen like that. You know what I mean? They don't always happen like that. But yeah, and then the market, what happened was, even though the people were saying the OPEC news was fake, then the market started to squeeze. Once the call buying really started to stem up, then the market squeezed, had a really nice squeeze. And then into the close, it gave back, faded and gave back a good chunk of the gains. I remember that day. And then after that, good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Look. See that? So you had the lows, and then you had a squeeze, and then gave back half of it. And then that's it. But I'm telling you, the point of the whole story is, even myself watching this action religiously each and every day, this thing, when he came in on that day, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting it. It came out of nowhere. Market looked like crap. There was no call activity throughout this whole process here. Nothing. Even these little squeezes, nothing. And I remember here, similar to like where we are now. That's where sentiment really started to shine green, right here. So you found a little bounce and then gap to lows, and that's where he stepped in. You know, and you guys could probably relate, right? You look at a chart like this, because you went through it with me, you know, it doesn't look as bad, right? You're like, oh, you know, that's not that bad. But you watch every tick and sit through this. Oh, you start to grow fur. You're so bearish. You start to grow some fur. You know, the charts don't do it justice. They never do it justice. Right? You look back, you're like, wow, it doesn't look as bad as it was, but it's bad. It looks like no hope. Pablo, what are you saying? Google Sweeper 900 is a missile. Yeah. Well, that's why, Pab, because first of all, Goog is the one the big boys like to sweep. Very rarely it's the Google with the L. It's always the Goog. And sweepers, once in a while you'll see blocks. Sweepers in this thing are rare. They're dinosaurs. They're dinosaurs. Like Amazon. It's like Amazon. So any sweep, if this was 300 grand, it would have caught our attention. $1 million, you know, is a pretty big bet for that name. You know, like the Amazon guy off the other squeeze. What was that? That wasn't that big, right? The Amazon guy, if I remember correctly. I think it was maybe 300 grand. But for Amazon, you know, the type of flow it catches, it was significant. Where is it? Let's see here. 2017. The hell? It doesn't go back? What was the date on this? 2017. It doesn't go back. It's giving me put action. Nah. Was this it? No, that's a block. You know where I would find it here? 1 second. I'm just curious on the size because it wasn't that big. You know, it's a big difference, Pablo. It's a big difference between Apple and an Amazon and Google. You know, it's like in the bank. It's like Bank of America, you know? I mean, it's known to catch action. By the way, look, insiders selling, they don't stop. Oh, these guys, these freaking insiders selling for 6 straight months. I didn't post it on Twitter. Oh, yeah, I did. Wait a second. Here it is. That's it. I posted at the close. 344. $344. You know? Oh, there you go, Tim. I just should pay attention to you, Tim. You get it a half an hour before I do. But yeah, so, you know, this was the sweep. Again, the date is what? October 30th. Okay. And the same thing, we weren't, Tim, right? We weren't seeing any action up until that day. Netflix caught some buying that morning, and then Amazon later in the day. Oh, yes, son of a gun, these charts. Look at this. The hell? Oh, I went back to 2016. That was literally the lows. Right? October 30th, right there. Look. At the worst spot. All right? Who the hell wants to buy that into the weakness? Yeah, October 30th. Here, the stock was $15.19. And look at it. Gave it all back now. But these expired too, I think, right? Yeah, November. Oh, no, not yet. So similar. All right, boys and girls. All right, so basically that's the story from me. I think here, especially if you're not really playing the short side, which you should be waiting for a better setup, in my opinion, anyway. But if you mostly play the long side, here's where you need to start looking at the least and be ready, and pick your spots here. All right. Hopefully, we'll see. Yeah, we got a holiday week, so it wouldn't surprise me we go dead the rest of the week, and then we come back next week. That might be the best thing to happen, actually. But we'll see what tomorrow brings. All right. Always a pleasure, guys. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the time with the fam. Eat some turkey. Watch some football. Relax your minds. All right. Be good, everybody.